You know, there's this invisible force that's running pretty much everything. It decides the price of your coffee, whether you can get a job, what your savings are actually worth. Yep, I'm talking about the economy. And look, I get it, it seems massive, super complicated, but it really just runs on a set of rules we can actually understand. So let's dive in, okay? Let's pop the hood and see how this engine that drives our world really works.
I mean, you use it every single day, right? You're part of it. You buy stuff, you sell stuff, you go to work. But have you ever really stopped and thought about the mechanics behind it all? Like, where does the money you're spending actually come from? And what makes its value go up one day and down the next? That's exactly what we're going to unpack right now.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to tackle this in 5 parts. First up, we'll get to the bottom of what money really is. Then we'll check out the money-making machine, how banks literally create it. After that, we're going to ride the economic roller coaster, the booms and busts. We'll look at the very real human cost of all that. And finally, we'll meet the folks who are actually trying to steer this whole thing.
Okay, let's start at square one, the absolute foundation of the entire system. We all think we know what money is, right? It's the cash in our wallet. But in the world of economics, it's something way more specific and, honestly, way more powerful.
So, here's the key thing to get. Money isn't just about coins and paper bills. It's basically any asset that we, as a society, all agree to use to buy stuff from each other. Think of it like a tool, a social contract that makes everything work. Without it, we'd be stuck trying to barter, trading your programming skills for a loaf of bread or something. What a mess that would be.
And for something to actually count as money, it has to do 3 specific jobs. First, it's got to be a medium of exchange. That just means everyone accepts it as payment. No arguments. Second, it needs to be a unit of account. This gives us a common ruler to measure value, so we know a car is worth more than a coffee. And finally, it has to be a store of value. That means you can stick it under your mattress today and it'll still be able to buy stuff tomorrow.
All right, now this is where things get kind of wild. You probably think most money is printed by the government, right? Well, nope. Most of it is created by regular old commercial banks, and they do it every single time they make a loan. It's all thanks to a system that works like a giant multiplier.
The reason this whole thing is even possible is something called fractional reserve banking. And the rule is actually pretty simple. When you deposit money, banks don't have to keep all of it just sitting in a vault. They only have to hold on to a tiny piece of it. That's the reserve, and they can lend out the rest. And that's where the magic starts.
Okay, let's walk through this. Imagine you deposit $100 into bank number 1. Now, let's say the reserve ratio is 10%. That means the bank keeps $10 in its vault and loans out the other 90. Now think about this. You still have $100 in your account, right? But now there's also a new $90 out there in someone else's hands. Just like that, the money supply has already grown.
And this is where it really gets going. The person who borrowed that $90, they're going to go spend it. And whoever they pay deposits it into a second bank. So now bank number 2 has a fresh $90 deposit. It does the same thing. It keeps its 10%, which is $9, and then loans out the remaining $81.
And the cycle just keeps on rolling. That $81 loan gets spent and then deposited into bank number 3. Bank 3 keeps its reserve, that's $8.10, and then loans out another $72.90. See the pattern? Each step, each loan creates brand new money, all from that single original deposit.
So, you might be wondering, how far does this actually go? Well, with a 10% reserve ratio, that single initial $100 deposit can end up creating up to $1,000 in the total money supply. 1,000. That is the incredible power of the money multiplier. It's what allows economies to grow really fast, but it also shows you how the whole system is built on a series of loans, which makes it feel a little interconnected and maybe even a bit fragile.
Now, this ability for the money supply to expand and contract is a huge reason why our economy isn't just a straight line up. No, it moves in cycles. You've got the good times and the bad times. It's a rhythm that economists call the business cycle.
Yeah, the best way to think about it is like a roller coaster. You have these amazing peaks where everything's going great, and then you have these troughs where not so much. These are just the natural ups and downs of economic growth, and we measure them by looking at stuff like national output, jobs, that kind of thing.
So first, you've got the peak. This is the very top of the hill. The economy is just humming along. Businesses are thriving, and pretty much everyone who wants a job can find one. It feels amazing, but it's always a temporary high. Because after that peak comes the downturn, the recession. This is when things start to shrink. The country's total output, people's incomes, and, this is the big one, employment all start to fall. This is that part of the ride where you feel your stomach just drop.
Then you hit the trough. This is the absolute bottom of the cycle. Economic activity has pretty much bottomed out. This is the point of what you'd call maximum economic pain. It's when unemployment is usually at its highest and businesses are really, really struggling.
But after the trough, the climb starts all over again. That's the recovery phase. Businesses start hiring again, people feel confident enough to start spending, and the whole economic engine starts to rev back up towards its full potential. The roller coaster is heading back up that hill for another go.
Okay, so these cycles, they aren't just lines on a chart, right? They have a huge, huge impact on real people's lives. And that impact is felt mainly through two things: unemployment when things are bad and inflation when things are good. Let's focus for a second on how we measure the very real human cost of a recession.
So, to really get a handle on unemployment, economists split up the adult population into three main groups. You've got the employed, people with jobs. The unemployed, and this is key, these are people actively looking for a job but don't have one. And then you have everyone else, who are considered not in the labor force. Think students, retirees, stay-at-home parents.
So when you hear that headline, unemployment rate, on the news, where does it actually come from? It's a pretty simple two-step formula, actually. First, you add the number of employed people and unemployed people together. That gives you the total labor force. Then, you just divide the number of unemployed folks by that labor force number. So, using these numbers here, you'd get a rate of 5.5%. It's a simple bit of math, but man, it gives you a powerful snapshot of how the economy's doing.
So, if the economy really is a roller coaster, is there anyone actually driving the thing? Well, kinda. That's supposed to be the job of a country's central bank. They try to smooth out those bumps in the business cycle by using their control over the money supply. And to do that, the central bank has three main tools in its toolbox. First, there are open market operations. That's a fancy way of saying they buy or sell government bonds to put money into or take money out of the system. Second, they can change that reserve requirement we talked about, telling banks how much cash to keep on hand. And third, they can adjust the discount rate, which is basically the interest rate they charge banks for loans.
So how does this all work in the real world? Well, if the economy is slow and they want to speed it up, the central bank can lower that reserve requirement, letting banks lend out more money. They can also cut interest rates to make it cheaper for people and businesses to borrow and spend. Now, if the economy is getting too hot and they want to cool it down, they just do the opposite. They raise the reserve requirement, they hike interest rates, and they sell bonds to suck money out of the system.
And that really brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? We have this driver, the central bank, with all these powerful tools trying to steer the economy. But you've got the forces of human psychology, crazy new inventions, and unpredictable global events all pushing and pulling. So, while we might have a driver for the roller coaster, can it ever be fully tamed? Or are we just destined to ride these booms and busts forever? That's the real billion-dollar question.